Hi guys, Naru here from Motion Swift Synthesis. I'd like to show you in this video our fuzzy boxes, which are distortion modular patches, scope modular patches that come with our TH3 bundle with the TH3 acid and with the TH3B synthesizers. So in this video, I'm not gonna go through the sound itself, but it's just look at it sort of like a quick online sort of manual to these devices. Just gonna show uh, what they are doing and kind of explain a little bit the signal flow for each device. So you get more patches, but in this video we'll focus on the distortion ones. So there's 4 distortion patches. As you see, TH3 Tiny, Compact, Full, and Static. So they're different kind of iterations, different sizes, and a little bit do different things. But basically they're, as we said, distortion effects boxes. So the simplest one is TH3 Tiny. Now what it does is it takes your sound, you have different sections and everything is labeled, and obviously as you can see. So it takes your sound, first it goes through a high pass filter, which you can then bypass if you want to. So you can set the filter over here. It's a really mild 6 dB HP filter. It's kind of just, to take away the low end if you want to get really distorted sort of lead sounds and you don't want this big huge mess of a bass sound resulting from your distortion, so you can take off the low end. And then it goes basically to 6 different distortion modules, and you have a choice between them. So the choices are, first you have soft or hard, just a regular, what's called a distortion module. Then you have what is called a pulsifier module. Then you have the 12AX7 distortion module, a decimator, and soft fallback. You can choose between one of these 6 options by just using this slider over here. And each of these options, of course, has their own parameters on the module itself. The one to look at is the decimator, which has, bypass to either or both the bit reduction and the sample rate reduction. And we've also included in this version a small sine LFO, which you can use to modulate the sample rate reduction, which is a really, really nice effect. So 6 choices, really quick. You can just choose one of these 6. As with all the TH3 modular effects, you get a bunch of presets. Maybe for this one, it's not really so much necessary, right? Because all you do is choose one and kind of pick some presets, but pick the parameters. But we did include some cool presets that kind of sound cool with running sort of TH3 and acid and TH3 beast acid lines, basically. So that's for the Tiny. The second one we called Compact, and again, if you load it, it also has a bunch of presets that to get you started. And let's go over the synthesis chain real quickly again. Before, I just want to show you also that you can basically, because everything is labeled really nicely, you can even take away the wires. You don't need to actually see this because you can kind of see the signal flow goes from the left to the right and from the top to the bottom. So it goes from the audio in to the filter over here, to the distortion, to the decimator, to the whatever is down the line, and then eventually comes out and goes back on top and to the right into the audio output, as you can see if you turn on all the wires. You can also alternatively turn on solo for the wires, and then whichever module you click on, you can see what's going into it and where it's going to, everything that is connected basically to the module that you clicked on. But again, there's really no big need for the wires over here. So this version is a little bit different. Over here, remember, you had just basically you had 6 choices. So here, instead of having choices, you have a running signal flow. It's going to the same type of high pass filter and bypass as before, but now it's going into a distortion where you can choose 2 types, either soft or hard, or you can also bypass this whole circuit altogether if you go on the 3rd option. Notice it's a 4-to-1 switch, but the last one is not connected. So number 1, it basically shows it on the text bar itself. So it's soft, and then option 2 is hard, and then option 3 is bypass, as shown here. And then it's going into So again, we said here it's a kind of a linear signal flow, right? It's not a choice. It's going from one distortion to the next one. So it's going from this distortion into a decimator, which we kind of view it as a distortion in a way. So it's going from the distortion into the decimator, and then you get a low pass filter, and then you get a compressor. So the compressor here is kind of nice. Obviously, you could add it externally. Just put a compressor on the insert effects slot over here. But it's kind of cool that it's included in the patch because you can then go kind of violent on some of these presets and have, let's look at this Kill Prodigy one where you can see the distortion is all the way to the top, and it's getting decimated, and the decimator is getting kind of really aggressively modulated. It's modulating so fast that it's in audio rate and it's causing actual distortion over here. So then it's going into a compressor, and it's kind of low, like on a low threshold and pretty, mildly high ratio, and it's kind of knocking it down back a little bit, so it's not clipping on your output, and the sound is much more uniform, and you get this. It's pretty nice, heavy and distorted sound. I mentioned it just a little bit, but just to say that on each one of these, the final thing before the output is an insert effects slot. So you can add, additional mono effects, whether it be one effect or the multi-effect slot. So you can use this as a distortion box and include additional effects by yourself via the multi-effect slot. We did not add additional effects in most of these presets over here because, just kind of to save DSP. We give you the distortion box in the modular fashion, and additional effects are up to you. You can just add them up over here. So that's the Tiny. This is the Compact. Whoa. And let's move down to the full. Static and full are kind of, static is not really like full, so let's look at full. So full kind of goes back to what the Tiny had with the choice of 6 distortions over here, but also has some additional stuff, and you can see it also has modulations. So let's look at what this thing does. This is kind of let's call it, maybe it's a little bit over the top. Oh, I see. I can't really scroll this down because of my screen. I'm sorry, because of my resolution on this PC is kind of large. So, but down there is another. Okay, I'll show you. So basically, you have pre-distortion. Because okay, let's start over. You have this main section over here. This is our main distortion section. This is like the heart of this device. This is the same as the TH3 Tiny. So here you can choose one of the 6 types. We talked about this already, and you have the switch over here. But before this main distortion, you have a pre-section and then a post-section. So in the pre-section, you have distortion and a filter. And this filter this time, instead of being just a simple high pass or low pass, it's a poly filter, the Sonic Core poly filter with all these millions of types. I think it's 25 types, and some of them are kind of funky, like phaser and flanger and whatever, but you also have all the basic, low pass, high pass, band pass, and all of that. And then it goes into the main distortion, and then what I apologize that you can't see, it's going again into another poly filter and another post distortion. So what this kind of does is you can use, let's say like in a real world situation, okay? So you would input your sound, distort it just a little bit maybe to give it some bite, enter it into the poly filter, whatever setting you may want, and as you can see, these are actually full-fledged filters with LFOs synced to BPM. The LFOs can be re-triggered. If you don't have to send MIDI to this patch, but if you send MIDI to this patch, then your LFOs can re-trigger on each new MIDI note. And you can also use MIDI in this patch to affect the key follow. Actually play the filters with notes, with MIDI notes. So it's a full-fledged filter, pre-distortion, full-fledged filter, then goes into the main distortion choice sort of thing, and then goes into another post filter, which is, again, another poly filter. So this is total overkill, as you can see. But you can get really, really interesting sounds because you get all these kind of distorting effects and filtering effects working together. And synced to your BPM, modulating, flying around. This is a really dynamic sort of patch. So we call this TH3 Fuzzy Box Full, but it could have just been easily just called TH3 Fuzzy Box Dynamic because it's really evolving and dynamic and blah blah blah. So if this was a dynamic version, oh, and again, one last thing, let's look. This actually has a bunch of presets. There is one bank from Atom Sessions. It's 18 presets, pretty cool stuff. And then there's another bank with 45 presets inside. So this one has quite a lot of presets altogether. Okay, so let's look at the one that we call static. So if the full one had, as you saw, LFOs and BPM and blah, 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 and everything moving around. Here, nothing is moving around dynamically. As you can see, there is no MIDI involved and no clock. But it has some cool stuff going on inside as well. So the polyfilters from the other one are gone, but what you have instead is it is also based on filtering with distortion, but in a little bit of a different way. So first it goes into the pre-high pass and bypass. This you already know from the other patches. So an option to high pass the sound. Then it's going into a pre-distortion, and as you can see, the soft output is connected. So it's, again, just to give, you can use it all the way up if you want, but the idea of the pre-distortion is just to give some extra body, to your sound. Maybe just a little bit, but obviously it depends on you. Then it's going into a free filter bank. Now this is pretty cool. It's kind of like an EQ, but the Q setting over here really kind of gives it like the scope. If you know well the modular, it kind of sounds like these bandpass 24 resonating filters a little bit. So you can get really strange tones by using this free filter bank, as they call it. Play around with it and you'll immediately notice what I'm talking about. It's especially cool because you have the pre one and then the post one. We'll get to it in 1 second. So summarize pre, high pass, distortion, then you get this funky EQ going. Set it up as you please. And then you go into the main distortion types, which you already know, the 6 types that we've talked about. And you get the choice over here. And then it goes into the post EQ, which is again same as the free filter bank over here. Again, another free filter bank. And you can set it, it's pretty cool if you set them kind of like similarly, but a little bit differently. As you can see here, for example, on both of them, the 200 is all the way cut off, and then the 3200 one is all the way cut off. By the way, you can enter your own values. And then the emphasized sections are a little bit different, and it kind of just brings a really cool, strange tone to it. Try it out for yourself. And then it's going again to the post distortion because this EQ might again kind of take away some of the sound. So the post distortion is, again, think of a little bit maybe like a saturator. Kind of it plays the role of a saturator a little bit. So you can, again, it's going out from the soft output. So just mildly, maybe you want to kind of give your sound some more body again after processing with the EQs. So the results are really cool. From all these boxes. This one also comes with 31 presets. You can make many more. The presets are obviously just a starting point for getting you going and to get you some examples. So they work really nice with our TH3 and basically any mono synth. As you can see, these are mono boxes. So any mono synth from the scope system will respond really nicely to these boxes. So give it a try. And I hope you have fun with these.